Okay.
Morning, yo. So this is the package team's weekly retro, and we're gonna kick off with Tim, I believe.
Uh-huh. Yeah, my first one is a little embarrassing. It's really the first issue that I helped collaborate on, which was adding a confirmation modal for when you delete an item from the registry. And there was a bug that came up with it that I didn't see, where a modal pops up for each possible item that's going to be deleted. Paul from the security team jumped on it right away, which was awesome. But the copy was also not exactly accurate. I think it just reflected a misunderstanding of the reality of when I wrote that issue. But the good news is that Nick, with the issue that he's working on, the multi-select, just kindly fixed it and made it more accurate. So that was my first negative, but it's good to be through that and past it. And my second one is I didn't get any Rails practice in all week. I was just working on 12.3 issues and a lot of follow-up stuff, so I didn't get to learn anything this week.
So I'll go next. So today specifically had a bunch of issues writing some tests that I thought would be really easy, the multi-select stuff, but it turned out to be a lot more involved than I was anticipating. And unfortunately, this meant that I spent longer than I really wanted to writing these tests, which is a bit of a shame, but I have got them now done and they are working. So I'll take that as a success, even though it was a little bit longer than anticipated. And yeah, unfortunately, I haven't had much time to look into the issue about sorting the images via date and what performance implications that might have. And that was just because, like I said, I spent so long today. I was planning on doing it today, but I spent so long, longer than I expected, writing those tests. And so I just haven't had a chance to really dig into that. I would say that what I have had a look at, I mean, it's fairly trivial on the front end to sort the images when there's no pagination involved. So I could implement something like that, like really quickly, really easily, but that's obviously a really sort of placeholder solution when the image count is really low. But yeah, that's me.
So I got stuck for a little while on some refactoring from some feedback for one of my merge requests, and that kind of just kept me from really getting into one of the other issues that I was hoping to get farther on this week. And actually, it was also writing tests as well. It seems that the tests are always the tricky part, right? Additionally, at some point, I did a GDK update, and then that caused some errors with running the GitLab, the Rails app locally. So I had to spend some time debugging that, and that came down to one of the config files was updated, so we had to remove the one that's not in Git and then reload it to be able to get the new version. One other thing that I just noticed right before this meeting, which is not good, is that I had a doc update in a merge request on the CE that relates to a merge request on the EE project, and the doc request got merged and deployed, but the EE backend updates have not yet been merged and deployed. So we have some docs that are on the website that are not actually accurate. So that's not good. And I did ask if there's a process for keeping track of, how do you merge those both together? And that's still something that's also kind of up in the air with these weekly deploys. But hopefully there won't be too long of an overlap before the other one gets out.
That's a good one, Steve. Definitely worth following up on that one. I don't know whether Merge Trains handles this at some level once that gets added, or
It sounds like a good practice is if you have a merge request in each project that you need to go out together, when you assign them to the maintainers, make a note to whichever one you think is probably going to get finished first, make a note to that maintainer to not merge it but to reassign it to the other maintainer in order to make sure that they merge them both at the same time.
Yeah, cool. Probably worth some further investigation on what best practices there are. It sounds like just tagging the person you think might end up merging it is probably a little hit or miss. But yeah, whether there's some like work in progress tag or something, but I don't know if people then go on and you basically do everything except merge it until it's ready, but then does it get done? So yeah, it sounds like we need to look at this more. Thanks for raising that. It's a good one. They're all good. Didn't mean to suggest otherwise. I'm up next. I've been trying to work out how best to contribute to Redis Rapid Action, which is our response to some of the saturation events that have happened with our Redis installation. There's been a bunch of really interesting investigation going on, and I've put a link in the package channel so that people sort of saw what was going on there. But I want to try to contribute to that, and that may end up, we have an issue that comes in that we need to address because it's kind of important, but as of right now, it doesn't look like that's necessary. There's a architecture review channel in Slack where I sort of started chatting with Stan Hu and Andrew Newdigate, and there's a lot of interesting extra stuff that I hadn't seen. So if anyone has questions or wants to see that, then go look at that channel. It was tough though, sort of working out how I ought to contribute was my struggle. So I did ask around and sort of no one had good answers for me. I'm struggling a bit to keep track of moving parts information, which is sort of a similar vein there. Everything that's going on. Because it's the fire hose situation, it's really hard to know when to just go, nope, not relevant. Because sometimes I look at that stuff and I dig into it a bit and I'm like, oh, okay, this actually is important, or this is relevant, or this is interesting but not relevant. And that's the sort of stuff you cross off, but you don't really realize until you've had a look at it, and that takes a minute sometimes to sort of dig into it, and that can be a little time consuming. I think, I'm sort of passing on something that came up in one of our meetings. This has just been a bit of a lack of clarity on expectations for the engineering team on dates, as well as the cultural impact of our CD efforts. This sort of kind of CD that we're doing right now, which is a weekly kind of thing, is not really CD either. And I have some positive comments to say about this in the positive section. So this is not all negative, but it's that feeling of being like, okay, when's freeze? When do I need to worry about this? It's just going out 2 days later. Is it going to end up in the right release? And that's a question. So I'm not sure if I've done a great job there of working that out in advance. Trying to work out the hiring process for GoPeeps has been a bit of a struggle. The biggest blocker is that our hiring process is pretty heavily focused around Rails engineers. So if you don't pass a Rails test, you don't get the job. But if you're a Go engineer, you're not really, do you need to pass a Rails test? So I think there's a bit of a case here of building a whole new thing, which is what we're doing. But that'll just take a minute. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So mine was just, I spent a lot of time this week catching up for being out, but feeling pretty caught up now. And I just wanted to give Dan a shout out. Thanks for covering and offering to help me out. Really appreciate that. And Dan, back over to you, I believe.
Yeah, I have no sense of style. I should have added that in my section. But anyway, I think we can go to good stuff. Thanks, Tim. You're muted. You're muted.
How embarrassing. My first one's an easy one, but it's great having Ian and Georginez join the team this week. Sounds like they're both getting up to speed and really looking forward to contributing. And then I mentioned this one above, but Nick addressing the copy and the multi-select I thought was awesome. It's super helpful having the GIFs and the short videos and the issues demonstrating the functionality was really great and helpful. Although I wish there was a way to pause them because I was trying to read the copy and I was like, I can't read it fast enough. I had to watch it like 7 times or something like that. And I thought the team meeting on Tuesday went really well. I thought I referenced the timezone.io probably like 6 times this week. I thought it was great having the extra structure with the new boards that Dan created. And I thought just going through and doing the grooming session of some open issues in the backlog was great, because we weren't doing anything like that before. We were just looking at issues in the current milestone. So it's nice to feel as a team now we're getting a little bit longer view of not only what we're working on, but we will work on in the future. So I thought that was really cool. Yeah, that's all for me.
Okay, so for me then, I managed to get 3 MRs through this week. A couple of them were pretty small, like there wasn't a lot to them, but the fact that they got through and they were all merged and there wasn't any issues was, yeah, I was really chuffed. The multi-deletion of container images work that I did yesterday, that seems to work locally. It seems to work really quite well, and hopefully that's going to be a big improvement to what we've got there already. So I'm quite excited to get that out there and get that through. Although the whole time I was working on it, I was thinking about just the design of that table and how we could make that better. And I did have to resist doing that. So yeah, so there was that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to when we have the other things sorted, like the pagination problems and the performance issues, and then when we can really go to town on the UI and just make it really nice. I'm really looking forward to that. And then the last one was that I made my first contribution to GitLab UI with an MR. And I'm not entirely sure if that's going to go through just yet, but it was nice to sort of propose an idea. And that actually originated from one of my earlier MRs as well, where we were discussing a particular issue that could have been solved via a GitLab UI component. But then when we dived into it, actually that GitLab UI component couldn't solve it. And then my MR is to change that component to allow it to solve that problem in the future. So that was quite a fun and just a nice process to go through, of working across different teams and basically where an issue identified on one side has made it back and made the actual base product better, basically. So that was cool.
Was that the button on the empty landing state for the container page? Is that the?
That was the issue that kicked it off, yeah. But it was the actual empty state component itself not being able to support the things like code snippets or links within the descriptions and stuff like that. So I've created an MR that would allow that component to support those things, which means that it could be used in more places and then more uniformly across the UI, basically.
That's awesome.
This week, I spent some time reading through a book on Docker, and it was kind of like a book that went into some of the more details of how things work, which was really good. So I'm feeling a bit more comfortable with the concepts that we'll be needing to deal with eventually in the registry. But certainly still need to get more comfortable just using Docker in general, because it's certainly used everywhere, and that'll be worthwhile. Also, earlier this week, I was able to get the personal access tokens working with OAuth, and the NPM functionality just kind of worked right out of the box without any other updates needed. So hopefully that merge request will go through soon, and that'll help out all the NPM folks.
So for me, Dan created the CI/CD social channel, which I think is a really cool idea. So just wanted to give that a quick shout out. I also had a similar note as Dan about the team doing really well. I just removed that and +1 his, just so we didn't have any duplicates. And then another one from my side was, Tim, thank you so much for prioritizing and kind of prepping those issues for Nick really quickly. We really, really appreciate that. So just wanted to call that out. Over to Dan.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny, you're like, I'm going to mention this thing, but I removed mine, I left yours in, I just added a +1 to yours, and I'm like, then we have done that the other way around.
Well,
I'm just
Dan, I wanted to support you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I, just as John mentioned, I'm just really stoked on how productive everyone's being, and Steve and Nick both just doing such a great job. So really, thank you so much. I've also had some really good productive meetings with Tim, and I really appreciate Tim's hard work and his focus on the product needs, and also on a focus on being collaborative and thoughtful about what you do, Tim. It's super appreciated. It makes coming to work a lot better for me. Thank you. I think to go back to the Stephen Nick killing it, having a team where everyone's sort of working really hard makes me want to work really hard, which has some negative side effects of working too much. But it's also that feeling of like, well, we're all really achieving, and it's such a nice place to be in a team with people who are really working hard and are really passionate about it. So thank you so much for that. I'm some way down the rabbit hole, GitLab rabbit hole, as I'm calling it, where it's a little bit like things are starting to make sense now, which is sort of a nice feeling, but I don't know how far down that goes. So we'll find out. And I've had some other really, I don't know yet, man. I just think I'm going to be ejected from the matrix at some point. Some other conversations with some of my peers, Elliot and Darby, and some other of the managers, the manager lean coffee meetings we have in the afternoon, where we can just sit down and talk about things, have been awesome and really, really, really nice for me. That's certainly giving me a lot of context around what expectations are and what I'm doing. So those meetings have been very helpful, and I certainly encourage everyone else, given the opportunity, to meet with peers and sort of just to get a little bit more context around what's going on. It's really helpful in this environment to have sort of slightly more close connections. But yeah, that's it from me.
Cool. So no action items for this week, it sounds like.
My big thing is just how do we follow up on the item that you brought up, Steve? The documentation MR that went out. How do we follow up on that? John, do you have suggestions on that? I think you've been here longer than either of the rest of us in this meeting.
Yeah, I don't know that I do, honestly. I'm not sure I've ran into this situation in the past. So that's not super helpful, but yeah, not really sure.
So
I can link to the initial question that I posed in Slack. I'll send a link of that. I think I posted it in the development channel, and one or two of the documentation engineers, and I think one other backend engineer had kind of commented on what they're doing, and the kind of the direction that it's taking, and different ways that we might be able to look at it. So there's a conversation going, and hopefully be able to get somewhere with it.
Can you address to that, Steve?
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, sorry, just asking, would you mind linking to that maybe real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But let's follow up on that sometime soon. It feels like, I don't know the merge trains functionality super well, but like it feels like that is exactly what this is designed to handle, the merges that are dependent on other merges and have to go out as one unit and perhaps in a certain order. That's the release team's working on that. That's Darby's team. So there might be something going on there. So it might be worth pinging Darby about that. And also Darby's awesome. So I'm sure he'd be more than happy to help out if he could. Let's follow up on that. Do you like Monday? Do you want to sort of follow up, or in the team meeting, just sort of follow up on what we got to with that? I definitely think it's worth following through, because it sounds like there's a gap here for everyone. So it's worth following up on for that reason. Does that seem reasonable?
Yep.
Cool.
What about, we talked yesterday a little bit about when do we know something's released, and Steve, you just sent the note from Nathan. So the best way to do that is to find the commit SHA of one of the merge requests that we push through, and then see where GitLab C or E is on that. Feels like there's got to be a better way for knowing quickly, but maybe we could keep following up on that.
Yeah, I think there's no notification to the original issues. I think one of the biggest sort of like stopping points of that is you have to proactively check. So it makes it a little trickier.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting situation, and I think that's worth investigating as well. Like, when does the ticket status, when does the issue status get updated as the merge, all the MRs get merged? And there was some comment, I think it was you that made it, Steve, around there being potentially multiple MRs that get split out and you're not sure if they're then related. And I get that there are edge cases there, but this feels like something that we should care about as well from a product functionality standpoint.
With the weekly rollouts, does anyone know what day those occur on? No, because I'm guessing that if something gets merged and it goes through the QA process, according to the rules, I believe it should go out with whatever that next rollout is. So that is one way to know if something is out, is that if you see a merge request merged and an issue closed, then we should be able to assume that it's going out on the next one. But that's worth checking.
Were we just referring to the dates that we're deploying to .com? Like on a weekly basis? I believe it's just every Monday, right?
Mondays, okay.
Yeah. I'll look for the link real quick of the auto deploy schedule and I can link that in here.
Cool.
All right. Anyone else have anything else we ought to cover?
I was just chatting with Nathan real quick on merge trains. I wasn't speaking because I was thinking about what you guys were talking about, what you all were talking about. But yeah, I don't believe merge trains lets you have relationships right now between MRs. Nathan's been covering the front end for that, so I wanted to check with him before I brought it up. But it sounds really neat. I feel like you may have stumbled on a really neat idea there, Dan. Saying this MR shouldn't be merged before this MR is merged, right? That can be really, really neat and powerful.
Well, there's a relationship merge, but there's also a dependent merge, right?
Exactly. Yeah, very, very, very neat stuff.
All right, well, sweet. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a good one, Pete.
Bye.
Thank you very much.